At 3:17 a.m., I was staring at my laptop screen in complete disbelief. My son Michael had just crept into my home office, thinking I was asleep upstairs. What he didn't know was that the security camera, the one he thought was broken, was recording everything. I watched him sit at my computer, type in passwords, access accounts that held my life savings. My hands trembled as I realized the truth. This wasn't the first time. For 6 months, I'd trusted him completely, signed papers giving him control of my finances after my stroke, believed his reports about market losses, never questioned why my retirement fund kept shrinking while he drove a new BMW. But that night, watching him work with practiced efficiency, I understood something that changed everything. My own son had been systematically destroying my financial future. What happened next would expose a betrayal so deep it would shock our entire family. And the evidence I gathered would prove that sometimes the people who claim to protect you are the ones you need protection from most. My name is George Reynolds. I'm 72 years old, and this is the story of how I caught my son stealing everything I'd worked 45 years to build, and how I used his own greed to destroy him. If you've ever worried about trusting family with your finances, or if you're caring for aging parents, you need to hear what I discovered. Because what started as a simple security camera became the key to saving my entire life's work. Some mornings, the house still smells like Margaret's coffee, French roast, ground fresh, the way she made it for 43 years before the cancer took her. I keep that ritual alive now. Same blue ceramic mug, same spot at the kitchen table where I read the financial news. The Wall Street Journal crinkles between my fingers as I scan the market reports, a habit from my days as chief accountant at Midwest Insurance Corp. The morning sun catches my Mont Blanc pen, Margaret's wedding gift to me in 1978. For all the important documents you'll sign together, she'd said, wrapping it in tissue paper with that smile that could light up a room. The pen sits next to my reading glasses on the polished oak table, same spot every day. Next to it, Margaret's small crystal paperweight catches the light, casting tiny rainbows across the financial pages. She'd used it to hold down student papers during her 38 years of teaching. Now it anchors my daily routine. Routine matters when you're 72 and living alone. Wake at 6, coffee by 6:15, news and financial reports until 7:30, then breakfast, usually oatmeal with blueberries, the way Margaret insisted was healthiest. After breakfast, I tend to her rose garden, 23 bushes she'd planted over the years, each one marking a special anniversary or milestone. The Lady Diana roses near the back fence still bloom every June, fragrant and perfect. 6 months ago, everything changed. The stroke wasn't severe, what doctors called a minor episode, but it left me shaky for weeks. My handwriting became unsteady. Simple calculations took longer than they should. For a man who'd spent 45 years balancing books and managing complex financial portfolios, the cognitive fog was terrifying. Michael arrived at the hospital before I was fully conscious. I remember waking up to see him talking quietly with Dr. Morrison in the hallway outside my room. They spoke in the careful tones medical professionals use when discussing uncertain prognoses with family members. When Michael noticed I was awake, he hurried to my bedside with tears in his eyes. "Dad, thank God, you scared us." But Lisa appeared beside him, her face etched with what looked like genuine concern. She held a bouquet of Margaret's favorite daisies, white petals bright against the sterile hospital room. "We've been here all night," she said, squeezing my hand. "The doctors say you're going to be fine, but you need rest." Over the next 3 days, Michael transformed from worried son to protective guardian. He spoke with nurses about my medication schedule, discussed discharge planning with social workers, and coordinated with Dr. Morrison about follow-up care. When the occupational therapist mentioned concerns about my ability to manage complex financial tasks during recovery, Michael stepped forward immediately. "I can handle Dad's finances temporarily," he offered. "I have a business background, and I know all his accounts and investments, just until he's back to full strength." The limited power of attorney papers appeared on my bedside table the next morning. Clean professional documents that Patricia Walsh had prepared, though I later learned Michael had contacted her directly, explaining that I was too weak to make the call myself. "Dad, you shouldn't stress about money right now," he said, holding the pen steady while my trembling hand signed the authorization. "Let me handle the investments until you're feeling stronger. I'll give you detailed reports every month. Keep everything transparent." I signed because I trusted him, because 45 years of fatherhood had taught me to believe that blood meant loyalty, because the stroke had left me genuinely confused about complex financial decisions, and Michael's offer seemed like the loving support any son would provide. That was my first mistake, trusting completely without verification, assuming that shared DNA guaranteed shared values. The second mistake was accepting his monthly reports without question. Every Wednesday evening, Michael would arrive with a manila folder full of investment statements and financial summaries, professional-looking documents with color charts showing portfolio performance, detailed explanations of market conditions, and careful projections for future growth. "Market's been rough, Dad," he'd explain, spreading papers across my kitchen table. "The retirement fund took another hit this month. Lost about 23,000 in the tech sector decline." His finger would trace red lines on complex graphs, pointing to percentage drops and quarterly comparisons. "But don't worry, this is normal volatility. Long term, we'll recover." I'd nod and make appropriate concerned sounds. What else could a recovering stroke patient do? Michael seemed so knowledgeable, so dedicated to protecting my interests. He'd arrive early to help with grocery shopping, stay late to organize my medication schedule, and always made time to explain financial decisions in patient, simplified terms. "We're keeping everything conservative," he'd assure me, filing papers in my oak desk drawer. "Blue chip stocks, government bonds, stable index funds, nothing risky. I know how hard you and Mom worked for this money." Lisa would usually accompany him on these visits, bringing fresh flowers for Margaret's memorial vase or homemade cookies for my freezer. She'd fuss over my medication organization, rearrange kitchen supplies for easier access, and ask detailed questions about my physical therapy progress. The perfect daughter-in-law, concerned and attentive. But small details began bothering me. Lisa's manicured nails, perfectly shaped acrylics that caught the light when she gestured. Expensive, professional salon work that cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. The new Cartier watch on her wrist. I'd noticed it during one of her visits, gleaming silver and gold against her tan skin. Michael's car had changed too. The reliable Honda Accord he'd driven for 5 years had been replaced by a sleek BMW sedan. "Company car," he'd explained when I'd asked about it. "Business has been good lately." These observations felt petty, ungrateful. My son was sacrificing time and energy to manage my finances during recovery, and I was begrudging him success in his own career. But 45 years in accounting had trained me to notice inconsistencies, and the math wasn't adding up. If the market was performing as poorly as Michael's reports suggested, if my portfolio was losing tens of thousands of dollars every month, how were they affording luxury items? How was Michael's mysterious business generating enough profit for expensive cars and designer accessories? I started paying closer attention to his explanations, asking follow-up questions, requesting more detailed information about investment strategies and portfolio allocation. Michael's answers became increasingly vague. Crypto spillover effects and market correlation factors and algorithmic trading impacts. Technical-sounding phrases that meant nothing when examined carefully. He'd bring printed reports from financial websites, highlighting articles about market downturns and economic uncertainty, using them to justify the consistent losses in my accounts. "Dad, I know this is frustrating," he'd say when I pressed for specifics, "but market timing is complicated. Even professional fund managers are struggling in this environment. The important thing is staying patient and not making emotional decisions." Patience. That became his constant refrain. Be patient with the losses. Be patient with the recovery timeline. Be patient with the complex investment strategies that only he fully understood. But patience, I was beginning to realize, might be another word for blindness. The red flag came on a Tuesday morning in October. Michael's monthly report showed another massive loss, $31,000 this time, the largest single-month decline since he'd started managing my accounts. Crypto volatility spillover, he explained, spreading papers across my kitchen table with practiced efficiency. The documents looked professional. Official letterheads, color charts, detailed financial projections. Even the stable funds got hit. Bitcoin dropped 40% in 3 days, and it dragged down everything else. I poured myself more coffee and studied the numbers. Clean printouts, impressive formatting, authoritative language, everything designed to inspire confidence in Michael's management abilities. But the underlying mathematics told a different story. Son, I said carefully, didn't you tell me last month that you moved the retirement money out of crypto-adjacent investments? Michael's hands paused over the papers, just for a second. A brief hesitation that might have been insignificant to someone else, but 45 years of auditing had taught me to notice when people's answers didn't align with their body language. Right, Dad, but market correlation's more complex than direct investment. Even traditional funds can be affected by cryptocurrency volatility through algorithmic trading systems and institutional portfolio rebalancing. The explanation sounded authoritative, technical, designed to make me feel foolish for not understanding the sophisticated investment strategies he was employing on my behalf. And remind me, which firm is managing the portfolio now? Meridian Financial Group. I showed you their credentials last month. They specialize in conservative portfolio management for retirees. I nodded slowly, watching his face for micro-expressions, the slight tension around his eyes when I asked direct questions, the way he shuffled papers to avoid prolonged eye contact. Of course, my memory isn't what it used to be since the stroke. Michael relaxed visibly when I mentioned my memory problems. That's understandable, Dad. Recovery takes time. That's why it's important to let me handle the financial stress until you're feeling completely back to normal. After he left, I sat in my office staring at Margaret's photograph on the bookshelf. She was laughing in the picture, caught mid-gesture at our 40th anniversary dinner 2 years before the cancer diagnosis. "What would you do, sweetheart?" I asked the empty room. Margaret had been a teacher for 38 years, high school mathematics, where she'd dealt with every form of academic dishonesty imaginable. She'd developed an instinct for detecting deception, a systematic approach to gathering evidence before making accusations. The best way to catch a cheating student, she used to say, isn't confrontation. It's careful observation. Let them reveal themselves through their own actions. That afternoon, I decided to test Michael's story. I called Meridian Financial Group directly. "Good afternoon. I'd like to speak with someone about my investment account. George Reynolds." "One moment, please." The receptionist put me on hold, then returned 30 seconds later. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds, but we don't show any accounts under that name. Could you have the account under a different name, or perhaps with a different firm?" "My son Michael Reynolds set up the account 6 months ago. He should be listed as the authorized representative." Another pause, keyboard clicking in the background. "I'm sorry, sir, but we have no records of any accounts associated with Michael Reynolds either. Are you sure you have the correct firm name?" I hung up without explanation, my hands trembling slightly. Not from stroke-related weakness, from anger. Meridian Financial Group had never heard of Michael Reynolds. No account in my name, no records of any transactions. The investment firm that had supposedly been managing my retirement savings for 6 months didn't exist in their system. I sat in my leather desk chair, the same chair where I'd balanced household budgets for decades, and tried to process the implications. If Meridian Financial Group wasn't managing my money, where were my retirement funds? What had Michael been doing with the power of attorney authorization for 6 months? And more importantly, how deep did this deception go? I opened my laptop and began searching for information about Reynolds Capital Ventures, the company name I'd noticed on some of Michael's recent reports. A simple Google search revealed a Delaware corporation filed 6 months ago. Officers listed as Michael Reynolds and Lisa Reynolds. Registered business address, their apartment complex, 6 months ago. Exactly when Michael had started managing my finances. They'd created a shell company using their own names, used it to justify moving my money out of legitimate investment accounts, created fake reports showing market losses while systematically draining my retirement savings. Professional theft disguised as family assistance. I closed the laptop and walked to Margaret's rose garden. The October air was crisp, and most of the blooms had finished for the season. But the Lady Diana roses near the back fence still showed a few late flowers, their pink petals defiant against the coming winter. Margaret had always said that gardens taught patience. Plant in spring, tend through summer, harvest in fall. No shortcuts, no quick fixes, just careful attention to what needed to be done, when it needed to be done. Michael and Lisa had forgotten that lesson. They'd chosen shortcuts over honest work, theft over patience, family manipulation over genuine earning. Time to remind them that some harvests come with consequences. That evening, I drove to Best Buy and purchased a small security camera. Nothing elaborate, just a basic model designed to look like a book on a shelf. The young salesman, probably Tommy's age, explained how it connected to my laptop through Wi-Fi, how it stored footage on a memory card, how the companion app allowed remote monitoring. Popular with people who want to monitor their home while traveling, he said, scanning the barcode with practiced efficiency. Battery life is about 2 weeks, and it automatically uploads recordings to cloud storage. I didn't mention I'd be monitoring my home while I was in it, watching my own son steal from me in real time. The camera went on the bookshelf facing my computer desk, camouflaged between volumes of tax code manuals I'd kept from my working days at Midwest Insurance. Perfect positioning. I tested the angle twice, making sure it captured both the computer screen and anyone sitting at the desk. Wednesday came again. Michael arrived for his usual financial update, Lisa in tow with fresh chrysanthemums for Margaret's memorial vase. We sat in the living room discussing my physical therapy progress and upcoming doctor's appointments. Normal family conversation, loving concern wrapped around systematic deception. Dad, Michael said as they prepared to leave, I need to update some portfolio allocations on your computer. Market opportunities that can't wait until next week. Some rebalancing that needs to happen before the market closes tomorrow. Of course, son, you know where everything is. I gave him my computer password, the same one I'd been using for 3 years. Our wedding anniversary? 042178. Simple enough for an old man to remember, complex enough to seem secure to my son, who was stealing my life savings. They left around 9:30, Michael promising to email me an updated portfolio summary by morning. I waited until the BMW's taillights disappeared down the street, then went straight to my office. The camera had captured everything. Watching your own son steal from you changes something fundamental in your relationship with the world. I sat in my leather desk chair, hands wrapped around a cooling cup of coffee, and stared at the laptop screen displaying the security footage. The timestamp read 9:47 p.m. Michael had returned to my office exactly 15 minutes after saying goodbye, using his spare house key to slip in through the back door. In the recorded footage, he moved with practiced efficiency. No hesitation, no guilty glances around the room. This was clearly a routine he'd performed many times before. He sat at my computer, entered my password without a moment's pause, and navigated directly to my banking website. First, he accessed my Schwab retirement account. The balance showed $247,000, money I'd accumulated over 45 years of careful saving and conservative investing. Michael opened a transfer window and initiated a withdrawal of $45,000. The destination account, Reynolds Capital Ventures. I paused the video and wrote down the details. Transfer amount, account numbers, confirmation codes. The methodical part of my brain, the accountant's brain that had served me well for 4 decades, began organizing the evidence systematically. When I resumed the recording, Michael's actions became even more damaging. He opened a spreadsheet program and began creating what looked like an official investment report. Loss projections, market analysis, fictional portfolio performance data designed to justify the missing $45,000. He worked for nearly an hour, crafting a narrative of market volatility and investment losses, that would explain why my retirement account had decreased by exactly the amount he'd just stolen. The report looked professional, complete with charts and graphs pulled from legitimate financial websites. But the most incriminating moment came at the end. Michael opened his personal email account and sent a message to someone named Derek Chen. Package delivered. 45K transferred as discussed. Dad still clueless. Should be able to clear another 50K next month before he gets suspicious. Package delivered. As if my life savings were merchandise in their criminal enterprise. I rewound the footage and watched it again, taking detailed notes. This time I noticed things I'd missed during the first viewing. Michael's familiarity with my computer system suggested he'd done this many times before. The speed with which he navigated to my financial accounts. The practiced way he cleared browser history and deleted temporary files after completing the transfer. This wasn't the first time. This was a routine. I opened my laptop's browser history, checking the timestamps from previous weeks. Empty. Completely cleaned. But buried in the system logs, files that most people wouldn't think to delete, I found evidence of regular nighttime access to banking websites. 2 or 3 times per month for the past 6 months. How much had they taken? How long had this been going on? I spent the rest of the night going through bank statements, credit card records, and investment account summaries. The paper trail told a devastating story. Starting in April, exactly when I'd signed the power of attorney, my retirement accounts had been systematically drained through a series of investment transactions. April, $38,000 transferred to portfolio rebalancing. May, $42,000 moved to emerging market opportunities. June, $39,000 allocated to defensive positioning. July, $41,000 shifted to volatility protection. August, $47,000 invested in alternative assets. September, $45,000 devoted to risk management. 6 months. 6 systematic thefts disguised as investment management. Total stolen, $252,000. $250,000. Nearly my entire retirement savings, accumulated over 45 years of careful financial planning and conservative investing. But the bank records revealed something even more infuriating. The money wasn't being lost in bad investments. It was being transferred directly to Reynolds Capital Ventures, then immediately moved to personal accounts and cryptocurrency exchanges. Some had been used to pay off credit card debt. Some had purchased luxury items. Some had been invested in legitimate securities under Michael and Lisa's names. They were building their retirement fund with my money. I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair, staring at Margaret's photograph. The anger was almost overwhelming, a physical sensation that made my hands shake and my chest tighten. But anger wouldn't solve this problem. Anger would only lead to confrontation, and confrontation would give them an opportunity to deny, deflect, and cover their tracks. Margaret used to say that the most effective teachers never showed their anger to cheating students. They gathered evidence first, built an airtight case, then let the facts speak for themselves. Time to gather more evidence. I picked up my phone and called David Thompson, my former colleague from Midwest Insurance, who'd started his own forensic accounting practice after retirement. We'd worked together for 12 years, and I trusted his expertise completely. "George, good to hear from you. How are you feeling after the stroke?" "Much better, thanks. But David, I need your help with something sensitive. I think I'm being defrauded by my own family." Silence on the other end of the line. Then, "Jesus, George, how can I help?" I explained the situation in detail. The power of attorney, Michael's monthly reports showing investment losses, my discovery that the investment firm didn't exist, the security footage of Michael transferring money to his own company. "I need a complete forensic audit," I concluded. "Every transaction, every transfer, every forged document. I need evidence that will hold up in court." "Oh, George, this is serious. We're talking about elder financial abuse, wire fraud, possibly RICO violations if they've been laundering money through multiple accounts. You need to contact law enforcement." "Not yet. I need to understand the full scope first. How much money? where it went, what their ultimate plan is. Right now, I have evidence of theft, but not the complete picture. David agreed to take the case. I'll need access to all your financial records, bank statements, investment accounts, everything. And George? Yes? Be careful. If they realize you're investigating, they might accelerate their timeline. Take whatever they can and disappear. After the call, I sat in my kitchen finishing my cold coffee and planning my next moves. The investigation would take time, weeks, probably to trace every transaction and document every theft. During that period, I'd need to continue playing the role of confused, trusting father while gathering additional evidence. But first, I needed legal advice. I called Patricia Walsh the next morning. She'd been our family attorney for 15 years, had handled Margaret's will and estate planning, and knew our financial situation intimately. George, I'm so glad you called. How are you recovering from the stroke? I'm fine, Patricia, but I need to discuss something confidential with you. Something about Michael and Lisa. When I explained what I'd discovered, her voice turned cold and professional. George, this is elder financial abuse under state law. It's a felony. We need to contact the authorities immediately. I want to, but I need more evidence first. Right now, I can prove individual thefts, but I need to understand their complete strategy. Are they planning to steal everything? Put me in a nursing home? Have me declared incompetent? What do you need from me? Prepare legal documents for when I'm ready to act, asset protection orders, criminal referrals. And Patricia? Yes? Start researching conservatorship law. I have a feeling that's their end game. The plan took shape over several phone calls that week. Patricia would prepare comprehensive legal filings while staying officially uninvolved until I was ready to act. David would conduct a complete forensic audit, tracing every stolen dollar and documenting every forged signature. I would continue playing the role of declining father while using the hidden camera to gather additional evidence. The performance would require acting skills I'd never needed before. Confusion without suspicion, trust without verification, gratitude for the very assistance that was destroying my financial security. But I'd had excellent teachers. 45 years of watching people try to hide financial irregularities had taught me how deception worked. Margaret's 38 years of dealing with academic dishonesty had shown me how to catch liars in their own contradictions. Time to use those lessons. Wednesday evening arrived with unusual October warmth. Michael and Lisa came for dinner, bringing Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine, Pinot Noir from a vineyard whose prices I recognized as being well beyond their stated financial means. We sat around my kitchen table using Margaret's good china, the wedding pattern with tiny blue flowers around the rim. Lisa served the food while Michael opened the wine, both of them chatting about their week with the relaxed comfort of people who believed their deception was working perfectly. Dad, you seem more alert lately, Lisa observed, refilling my wine glass. The physical therapy is really helping. I nodded slowly, as if the compliment surprised me. Some days are better than others, but I do feel like my thinking is getting clearer. Michael's hand paused over his wine glass. That's great, Dad, but remember, recovery from stroke can be unpredictable. Don't push yourself too hard with complicated things like financial planning. Oh, I'm not worried about that. You're handling everything so well. I smiled at him with what I hoped looked like genuine gratitude. I trust your judgment completely. The relief on both their faces was immediate and telling. Actually, Michael continued, I've been thinking we should discuss some longer-term planning. Your living situation, healthcare needs, that kind of thing. Lisa leaned forward, her voice gentle and caring. We want to make sure you're safe and comfortable as you get older. This house is so big, and maintaining it must be exhausting. I manage fine, I said, but with less conviction than usual. I've lived here for 37 years. All my memories are here. We understand that, Dad, but maybe it's time to think about simplifying. There are wonderful assisted living communities with full-time medical staff, social activities, meal services. You'd have people around all day instead of being isolated out here. Assisted living. There it was, the first hint of their long-term strategy. You mean leave the house? I asked, injecting uncertainty into my voice. Just to explore options, Michael said quickly. We're not saying you have to move immediately, but it might be smart to get on waiting lists for the better facilities. Some have 2-year waiting periods. What would happen to the house and all my financial accounts? We'd handle everything, Lisa assured me. Probably set up a more comprehensive management structure. Legal guardianship, maybe, just to make sure all your assets are protected and properly managed. Legal guardianship, the end game revealed. I nodded thoughtfully, playing the role of a man considering his limitations for the first time. That makes sense. I do get confused about financial things sometimes. All those investment reports you show me, they're so complicated. Michael relaxed visibly. Exactly. And as you get older, those kinds of decisions will only become more stressful. With guardianship, you wouldn't have to worry about any of it. We just want what's best for you, Lisa added, reaching across to squeeze my hand with those perfectly manicured fingers. After they left, I reviewed the hidden camera footage on my laptop. Their conversation after dinner had been captured in crystal clear audio. He's more confused than I thought, Lisa's voice said. Good. The guardianship petition will be easier to justify. How much more time do you think we have? 6 months? Maybe less. The assisted living story should keep him compliant while we transfer the remaining assets. What if he starts asking detailed questions about the money? He won't. Look at him. He can barely follow a simple conversation about moving to a retirement home. And the house? Sell it immediately after guardianship is approved. Market's strong right now. Should clear about $400,000 after paying off the mortgage. $400,000 from the house, plus whatever remained in my investment accounts. They were planning to liquidate my entire life's work and disappear with the proceeds. But they'd made a critical error. They'd revealed their timeline and strategy while I was secretly recording every word. Time to accelerate my own timeline. The emergency phone call came on a Friday morning, carefully orchestrated to create maximum panic. I called Michael at his office, letting genuine distress creep into my voice. Michael, I need you to come over right away. Something terrible has happened. Dad, what's wrong? Are you hurt? No, but Dr. Morrison called with my test results. They found something on the brain scan, a shadow. He says it might be... He used words I didn't understand, but he wants to do surgery immediately. Silence on the other end. Then, surgery? What kind of surgery? I let my voice become shakier, more frightened. Brain surgery. To remove the thing. It's very expensive, though. He's asking for $50,000 up front because my insurance won't cover the experimental procedure. $50,000? Dad, that's a significant amount. I know it's a lot of money, but if it means more time with my family, more time to see Tommy graduate... I paused, letting emotion build. Can you access the retirement accounts? Get the money transferred by Monday? Dr. Morrison says we can't wait. The silence stretched longer than it should have. Much longer than it would have if my son's first concern was my health, rather than protecting his theft operation. Dad, I'll need to check the liquidity situation. Some of your investments are in longer-term positions that might take time to liquidate without significant penalty. Time? I let confusion and fear color my voice. I thought you said the money was in stable, accessible funds. It is. But market conditions are tricky right now, and liquidating large amounts quickly can result in substantial losses. Let me see what I can do. I'll call you back within the hour. He didn't call back for 4 hours. When Michael finally returned my call, his excuses were elaborate and technical. Problems with the brokerage firm's computer systems, timing issues with market closures and settlement periods, verification procedures required for large medical withdrawals, complex regulations governing retirement account distributions. The thing is, Dad, $50,000 is a significant withdrawal. Are you absolutely certain this doctor is legitimate? Maybe we should get a second opinion before committing to such an expensive procedure. Are you saying I shouldn't have the surgery? I let hurt creep into my voice. That $50,000 is more important than my life? Of course not. I'm saying we should be careful. There are a lot of scams targeting seniors these days, people who prey on medical fears to steal money. I just want to make sure this is a genuine medical emergency and not someone trying to take advantage of you." Lisa's voice emerged in the background, clearly audible through the phone. Maybe he should reconsider anyway. Surgery risks at his age. "What did Lisa just say?" I asked. "Nothing, Dad. She's just concerned about surgical complications." We both are. But the hidden camera in my office captured their real conversation that evening. They returned to my house after I'd supposedly gone to bed, slipping in quietly with Michael's spare key to discuss their crisis in private. "This surgery request is a major problem," Lisa whispered, pacing nervously around my office. "I know. I stalled as much as I could. But if he insists on seeing the account balances himself, we're not ready for that level of scrutiny. There's still almost 100,000 in transit between accounts." Michael sat heavily in my desk chair, running his hands through his hair. "Then we accelerate to Plan B. File the guardianship petition next week. Claim he's making irrational medical decisions due to cognitive decline." Is that enough legal justification? Combined with the dementia concerns we've been building? Yeah, especially if we can get Dr. Morrison to sign off on diminished capacity. I'll call his office Monday, express family concerns about Dad's increasing confusion and poor judgment. Dr. Morrison was my primary physician for 8 years. A good man, but overworked and susceptible to family concerns about elderly patients making questionable decisions. "What about the money trail if there's a legal investigation?" Lisa asked. "I'll clean that up once we have guardianship. Retroactive investment authorizations, legitimate business expenses documented through Reynolds Capital Ventures. By the time anyone questions the transactions, he'll be legally incompetent to challenge anything." "And the house?" "Listed immediately after guardianship approval. Real estate market is strong, which should be we should clear 400,000 easily. Combined with what's left in his accounts, plus the money we've already moved, we'll be set for retirement." They had it all planned, my entire life, parceled up and distributed according to their financial convenience. The surgery emergency had forced them to reveal their complete strategy: guardianship petition, manufactured medical incompetence, liquidation of all assets, and legal incapacitation to prevent any challenges to their theft. But their acceleration also created an opportunity. By rushing to file guardianship papers, they'd be forced to present their case in court before they could finish covering their tracks. And I'd be ready with evidence they never suspected existed. The next Monday morning, I received a certified letter. Petition for emergency conservatorship filed by Michael Reynolds on behalf of his father, George Reynolds. The legal document cited progressive dementia, unsafe living conditions, and recent irrational decision-making, including attempts to spend large sums of money on questionable medical procedures. The hearing was scheduled for the following Friday, 5 days to prepare my counterattack. I called Patricia Walsh immediately. They filed the guardianship petition. Emergency hearing Friday morning. "Jesus, George, are you ready for this?" "I will be. Contact David Thompson. I need his forensic audit completed by Thursday. Every transaction documented, every forged signature identified. And Patricia?" "Yes?" "Prepare a complete counterfiling. I want evidence that not only am I mentally competent, but that this entire guardianship petition is an attempt to cover up systematic financial abuse." The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. David worked around the clock, completing the forensic audit, tracing every stolen dollar through multiple accounts, and documenting the sophisticated money laundering operation Michael and Lisa had created. Patricia prepared legal briefs, gathered medical records, and arranged for expert witnesses. I spent those days refining my performance, continuing to play the confused father while secretly organizing evidence that would destroy my son's life in court. The hidden camera captured 2 more conversations between Michael and Lisa as they prepared for what they believed would be their legal victory. "Once we get guardianship, we need to move fast," Michael said during one recorded conversation. "Liquidate everything, transfer assets to offshore accounts, and get Dad placed in memory care where he can't cause problems." "How long do we have after the court order?" 6 months, probably. Long enough to clean up the financial trail and establish legitimate documentation for everything we've taken. They were planning to steal my remaining assets, hide the money in offshore accounts, and warehouse me in a memory care facility where I'd be unable to challenge their theft. Complete financial and personal destruction disguised as family concern for an elderly man's welfare. But their confidence was about to become their downfall. Thursday evening, I sat in my kitchen reviewing the complete evidence package. David's forensic audit showed systematic theft totaling $340,000 over 8 months. Patricia's legal filing documented every forged signature, every unauthorized transfer, every fraudulent investment report. The hidden camera recordings proved premeditation, conspiracy, and ongoing deception. Most importantly, we had evidence of their plan to use the guardianship system itself as a tool for covering up their crimes. Friday morning arrived cold and gray, November wind rattling the courthouse windows. I dressed carefully in my best navy suit, the one I'd worn to Margaret's funeral, with polished shoes and my Mont Blanc pen in the breast pocket. Professional, competent, nothing like the confused old man they expected to see stumbling through court proceedings. Michael and Lisa sat across the courtroom with their attorney, a young man in an expensive suit who kept checking his phone and shuffling papers. They looked confident, prepared. Victory seemed assured in their minds. Judge Sarah Martinez called the hearing to order at 9:30 sharp. I'd researched her background thoroughly. Former prosecutor, 15 years on the bench, known for being tough on financial crimes and impatient with legal manipulation. "This is a petition for emergency conservatorship," Judge Martinez announced, her voice echoing in the small courtroom. Petitioner claims respondent lacks capacity to manage financial affairs due to progressive cognitive decline and recent episodes of poor judgment. Michael's attorney stood to present their case. His presentation was smooth, clearly rehearsed. Medical reports suggesting early-stage dementia. Family concerns about increasing confusion and disorientation. Recent example of attempted expenditure of $50,000 on questionable medical procedures. "Your Honor," the attorney concluded, "Mr. George Reynolds is a proud man who doesn't want to admit his limitations. But pride can't protect him from making increasingly dangerous decisions with his life savings. Emergency conservatorship is necessary to prevent further financial harm." Dr. Morrison's written evaluation was submitted as evidence. Brief, clinical, devastating in its implications. Patient shows signs of memory loss and confusion consistent with early-stage cognitive decline. Family reports increasing difficulty with complex financial decision-making. When they finished their presentation, Judge Martinez called me to the witness stand. I walked steadily across the courtroom, my hands stable, my voice clear. Let them see exactly how confused and incompetent I really was. "Mr. Reynolds," Michael's attorney began, "do you understand why we're here today?" "Yes," I replied clearly. "My son is attempting to obtain legal control of my finances through a conservatorship petition. And why do you think he would do that?" I looked directly at Michael, then back at the attorney. "Because he's already stolen $340,000 from my retirement accounts, and he needs legal cover to complete the theft." The courtroom went completely silent. Judge Martinez leaned forward. "Mr. Reynolds, those are very serious allegations." "They are, Your Honor, and I have comprehensive proof." What happened next was the most satisfying 15 minutes of my life. Patricia Walsh approached the bench carrying 2 banker's boxes full of evidence. "Your Honor, we'd like to present comprehensive documentation of systematic financial exploitation of our client." Michael's attorney jumped up like he'd been electrocuted. "Objection. This hearing is about capacity determination, not unsubstantiated allegations of—" "Overruled," Judge Martinez said sharply, her eyes flashing with the kind of anger that made experienced lawyers sit down quickly. "If the respondent has evidence of financial abuse by the petitioner, it's directly relevant to both the petition and the petitioner's credibility. Proceed, counselor." Patricia spread evidence across the prosecution table like a casino dealer laying out a winning hand. Bank statements organized chronologically. Transfer authorizations with forensic analysis of forged signatures. Screenshots of hidden camera footage, time-stamped and authenticated. David Thompson's complete forensic audit bound in professional presentation folders. Your Honor, this is not a case of diminished capacity requiring family intervention, Patricia began, her voice carrying the authority of 15 years practicing elder law. This is a case of premeditated theft, systematic fraud, and criminal exploitation by family members who viewed Mr. Reynolds as their personal retirement fund. She walked through the evidence methodically, building the case like a prosecutor presenting charges to a grand jury. 8 months of systematic theft beginning immediately after the power of attorney authorization. Creation of a shell company using the perpetrators' real names. Forged investment reports designed to hide missing funds. The petitioners created Reynolds Capital Ventures for one purpose: to provide a seemingly legitimate destination for stolen funds while maintaining plausible deniability about investment losses. Michael's face had gone white. His hands gripped the edge of the defendant's table, knuckles showing bone white through stretched skin. Lisa stared at her lap, shoulders trembling slightly. Furthermore, Patricia continued, we have recorded evidence that this conservatorship petition itself is part of the cover-up strategy, filed specifically to prevent discovery of ongoing financial crimes. She activated the courtroom's audio system and played the recordings from my hidden camera. Michael and Lisa's voices filled the room with crystal clarity, discussing guardianship as a tool for legitimizing theft, planning to liquidate my house and hide assets in offshore accounts. When Lisa's recorded voice said, "Surgery risks at his age. Maybe he should reconsider anyway," followed by their discussion about accelerating the guardianship timeline, I heard someone in the gallery gasp audibly. Judge Martinez's expression grew colder with each revelation. Your Honor, Patricia concluded, Mr. George Reynolds is a retired certified public accountant with 45 years of financial experience. He discovered this ongoing theft through methodical investigation and documented it with the same professional precision he applied throughout his career. Does this sound like someone with diminished cognitive capacity? She called her first expert witness. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, neuropsychologist, had conducted a comprehensive cognitive evaluation 3 days earlier. Mr. Reynolds scored in the 95th percentile for his age group on all measures of executive function, memory, and reasoning ability. His cognitive capacity is not only intact, it's superior to most adults of any age. The neuropsychological testing had taken 4 hours and covered every aspect of mental functioning. Memory tests, problem-solving exercises, complex reasoning scenarios, financial decision-making simulations. I'd perform better than 95% of people my age on every single measure. David Thompson testified next, walking through his forensic analysis with the methodical precision of an expert witness who testified in dozens of fraud cases. The evidence shows a sophisticated pattern of financial exploitation beginning 8 months ago, he explained, pointing to charts and timelines displayed on the courtroom's presentation screen. Unauthorized transfers totaling $340,000. Money laundering through shell companies. Forged documentation to justify missing funds. David's presentation included detailed bank records, cryptocurrency transaction logs, and documentary evidence of Reynolds Capital Ventures. Complete lack of legitimate business purpose. The shell company existed solely to provide a destination for stolen retirement funds. The sophistication of this scheme suggests extensive premeditation and financial expertise, David concluded. This was not opportunistic theft by confused family members. This was systematic exploitation by individuals who understood exactly what they were doing. The final expert witness was Dr. Rebecca Chen, forensic document examiner. She'd spent 2 days analyzing every signature authorization Michael had used to justify fund transfers. The questioned signatures were created by someone attempting to replicate Mr. Reynolds' authentic writing style, she testified, displaying in large photographs of signature comparisons on the courtroom screen. However, forensic analysis reveals pressure patterns, stroke formations, and timing characteristics completely inconsistent with natural signature production. Her analysis was devastating. Every single authorization letter Michael had created to justify fund transfers contained forged signatures, professional quality forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless. In my professional opinion, these documents represent a deliberate attempt to create false authorization for financial transactions, Dr. Chen concluded. When the expert testimony concluded, Judge Martinez turned to Michael's attorney. Counselor, do you have any response to this evidence? The young lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear through the courtroom floor. Your Honor, we were not prepared for these allegations. We'll need time to review the documentation and prepare a response. Mr. Michael Reynolds, Judge Martinez said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent 15 years dealing with criminals and their excuses. You're present in this courtroom. Do you wish to respond to the evidence presented against you? Michael stood slowly, his entire body trembling, not with age or infirmity, but with the fear of someone whose elaborate criminal scheme had just been exposed in public court proceedings. Your Honor, there's been a misunderstanding about the investment strategy. Mr. Reynolds, Judge Martinez interrupted, I'm looking at forensic evidence showing systematic transfers from your father's retirement accounts to a company bearing your name, a company created specifically to receive these stolen funds. How do you explain this? Michael's mouth opened and closed silently. No words emerged. Lisa grabbed his arm, whispering urgently in his ear, but it was far too late for damage control. The evidence was overwhelming, documented with professional precision, and presented by expert witnesses whose credentials were unimpeachable. Furthermore, Judge Martinez continued, I've heard recorded conversations in which you and your wife discuss using conservatorship proceedings to legitimize theft and prevent your father from challenging your criminal activity. Do you understand that elder financial abuse is a felony carrying substantial prison sentences? Michael collapsed into his chair, his face buried in his hands. Judge Martinez's gavel came down with the sound of absolute finality. Petition for conservatorship is denied. The court finds no evidence whatsoever of diminished capacity in Mr. George Reynolds. Furthermore, I'm ordering immediate freezing of all accounts associated with Reynolds Capital Ventures and directing the clerk to forward this entire record to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. She looked directly at Michael and Lisa with the expression of a judge who'd seen every form of human greed and manipulation. You have the right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you exercise that right and contact criminal defense attorneys immediately. The aftermath moved with the efficient brutality of the legal system engaging its full machinery against clear criminal activity. Within 6 hours of Judge Martinez's order, the district attorney's office had executed search warrants on Michael and Lisa's apartment, their personal computers, and all financial accounts connected to Reynolds Capital Ventures. They were arrested that evening, charged with elder financial abuse, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. The vacation house in Florida, purchased with my stolen retirement funds, was seized as proceeds of criminal activity. Their personal vehicles, jewelry, and other luxury items bought with my money were impounded pending asset forfeiture proceedings. I sat in my kitchen the morning after their arrests, reading about the case in the local newspaper. Local couple charged in elder abuse scheme, the headline announced. Below it, a smaller article discussed the rising trend of financial exploitation targeting seniors. My phone rang constantly, reporters wanting interviews, neighbors expressing shock and support, other elderly people sharing their own suspicions about family members' financial management. Patricia Walsh called around 9 o'clock. George, the prosecutor wants to meet with you next week. They're offering plea negotiations, full restitution plus substantial penalties in exchange for reduced prison time. What kind of reduced sentences? Probably 5 to 10 years instead of 15 to 20, plus mandatory restitution, substantial fines, and permanent prohibition from managing anyone else's finances. I considered this while watching steam rise from my coffee mug. Prison time seemed appropriate for the magnitude of their theft. But I wasn't interested in revenge. I wanted my money back and some assurance that they'd never be able to victimize anyone else. Accept the plea negotiations, I decided, but I have specific conditions. My conditions were non-negotiable. Complete restitution of all stolen funds with interest calculated from the date of each theft. Public apology letters published in local newspapers as a warning to other families. 500 hours of community service working with elderly financial abuse victims. An establishment of a supervised trust fund for my grandson Tommy. The trust fund provision was crucial. Tommy was 17, had no involvement in his parents' criminal scheme, and deserved better than the legacy they'd tried to create. The fund would pay for college, with remainder distributed when he turned 30, money from my legitimate savings, protected from his parents' influence forever. 3 weeks later, I met with Tommy in my living room. He sat on Margaret's favorite couch, still wearing his high school basketball jersey, confusion and shame written across his young features. "Grandpa George, I don't understand what happened. Nobody will explain anything clearly." We talked for 2 hours. I explained financial crime in terms a 17-year-old could understand, emphasized that he bore no responsibility for his parents' choices, and discussed the trust fund that would secure his educational future. "They really stole all that money from you?" he asked, tears forming in his eyes. "They did. But Tommy, I want you to understand something important. This isn't about the money itself. It's about honesty, integrity, and keeping promises to people who trust you. Your parents forgot those values somewhere along the way." "Are you angry at them?" I considered the question carefully. "I'm disappointed. I'm hurt that they viewed me as nothing more than a source of money to steal. But anger won't solve anything. What matters now is making sure you learn different values." Tommy nodded slowly. "The trust fund, that's really for my college? Full tuition plus living expenses for 4 years. Graduate school too, if you choose that path. But more than that, it's a promise that your education won't be held hostage by anyone else's financial mistakes." 6 months later, the legal proceedings concluded. Michael and Lisa pleaded guilty to all charges. They received 7 years in prison, suspended to 5 years probation with strict financial monitoring, full restitution of $340,000 plus $47,000 in interest and penalties, public apology letters that ran in newspapers across 3 counties. More importantly, they were prohibited from ever again serving as financial representatives for elderly family members. My retirement account balance today shows $387,000. My original savings plus all stolen funds, interest, and legal penalties. But the real victory wasn't financial recovery. It was reclaiming my dignity and autonomy from people who'd tried to reduce me to a confused old man whose money they could steal with impunity. I still live in the same house where Margaret and I spent 37 years building our life together. Still drink her coffee every morning, still tend her rose garden, still maintain the routines that anchor my independence. The limited power of attorney documents were shredded the day after the court hearing. Tommy visits every other weekend. He's a senior now, planning to study engineering at State University with full scholarship funding from his trust account. More importantly, he understands the difference between money earned through honest work and money acquired through deception. Last month, Patricia Walsh asked me to speak at a conference on elder financial abuse prevention. "George's story," she told the audience of social workers and law enforcement officers, "demonstrates that age doesn't equal vulnerability. The best protection against financial exploitation is staying mentally engaged with your own affairs and trusting your instincts when something doesn't add up." The hidden camera still sits on my bookshelf, camouflaged between tax code manuals. Not because I expect more theft, but because it reminds me that vigilance is the price of independence. Trust, once broken by systematic betrayal, requires verification to rebuild. Margaret would have been proud of how this ended. She always taught her students that the most important lesson wasn't avoiding mistakes. It was learning to recognize deception and respond with methodical, documented evidence rather than emotional confrontation. "Let the facts speak for themselves," she used to say. "Truth doesn't need dramatic presentation. It just needs clear organization and patient persistence." That's exactly what happened in Judge Martinez's courtroom. The facts spoke for themselves. 45 years of professional experience, 8 months of careful investigation, and comprehensive documentation of criminal activity presented with the same methodical precision I'd applied to corporate audits throughout my career. The result was justice without revenge, financial recovery without family destruction, and autonomy preserved through legal process rather than personal confrontation. If you're listening to this story and recognizing similar patterns in your own family situation, unexplained investment losses, relatives who insist on managing your financial affairs, people who seem to benefit financially from your confusion, remember these lessons. Age doesn't equal incompetence. Trust your professional instincts if you have them. Document everything before confronting anyone. Use legal systems rather than family confrontation. And never let anyone convince you that asking questions about your own money is inappropriate or ungrateful. The best protection against financial betrayal is preparation, investigation, and professional legal response. The most satisfying outcome isn't revenge against people who wronged you. It's reclamation of everything they tried to steal, including your dignity. Margaret used to mark her favorite Bible passages with handwritten notes in the margins. After she died, I found Proverbs 11:1 highlighted in yellow with her careful script beside it. Justice delayed is not justice denied, it's justice documented. She was right, as usual. Sometimes the sweetest victory comes not from quick retaliation, but from patient accumulation of evidence and methodical legal response that leaves no room for doubt or appeal. That's the story of how I caught my son stealing my retirement savings and used the legal system to reclaim everything he'd taken. It's also the story of how a 72-year-old man refused to accept the role of confused victim and chose instead to become the architect of his own justice.